Okay, I'm going to start. Welcome, everyone, to the annual celebration of women in politics. And there is so much to celebrate. I'm Donnie Deans. I am co-chair of the Emerge Vermont Development Committee, and long ago was the VDP chair. And this is my buddy.
Thanks, Donnie. Looking out is like, oh my goodness, this is so exciting, so amazing to be here. I'm Joan Lennis and co-chair with Dottie, so we sometimes have fun with the development committee. And I'm a former Vermont House of Representatives member, and I represented part of Shelburne and all of St. George.
Each year we gather together to celebrate the successes of our alums and Democratic women in office at every level of state government. We are so glad that you are here to celebrate with us. We'd like to acknowledge many honored guests in the audience tonight. Our speakers, alumni Lauren Dees Erickson, candidate for House, Franklin A. Woo! Lauren, stand up. Woo! And somewhere we have a Congressman Welch, somewhere around here. Woo! Congressman Peter Welch. And Senator Pro Tem Becca Ballot. Introducing our speakers tonight, this evening, is Governor Madeline Kunin, one of the founders of Emerge Vermont. Senator Keisha Ram, Hinsdale. Former state representative and Emerge cabinet, former state representative and Emerge Vermont cabinet member, Helen Head.
So we are so thrilled to bestow the Kunin Achievement Award tonight on Representative Maxine Grad. Unfortunately, Unfortunately, Maxine has tested positive for COVID and can't join us. It's really been not a happy moment for her, but we will hear remarks from her later in the program. We'd like to acknowledge and welcome many of the VIPs in the room, including Treasurer Beth Pierce. Beth is a dear friend of mine. We worked together a lot when I was on the House, and please consider taking a moment to thank her. Her service to Vermont and Emerge has been tremendous. I can't thank you enough, Beth.
You're the best.
We have Lieutenant Governor Molly Gray. Senate Majority Leader Allison Clarkson. And we have 4 speakers of the House. We have Gay Symington. I didn't see Gay yet.
Yes, she's here. Gay is here.
Gay. Shap Smith. Okay, there's Gay. Shap Smith is here. Woo! Mitzi Johnson. And our current speaker, Jill Krawinski.
Woo!
There are many House members, many candidates. I don't want to start naming because I'll miss somebody. So,
nudge everybody on the side and clap for everybody.
Woo! We'd also like to give a warm welcome to our cabinet members who are here, the many alums here tonight, and all the candidates joining us. We're honored to have you here. We have quite a few sponsors to thank for helping to make this evening possible. Our congressional sponsors are Congressman Peter Welch, Senator Becca Ballin. Phoenix Books hosting the Green Mountain Book Festival from Friday the 23rd of September to Sunday the 25th, and that'll be at Fletcher Free Library in Burlington. Woo! Thank you for all your support. And Governor Koenig's going to be there for that signing too. Our statewide sponsors are Charity Clark, Michael Pichek, Brenda Spiegel, Rebecca Holcomb, Lydia Spitzer, and Dottie Deans, Jane Stetson, the Vermont Democratic Party, and our venue tonight, Main Street Landing Performing Arts Center.
We also thank our many Senate, House, and municipal sponsors, as well as the members of our sponsor circle and leadership circle, without whose support and everybody's support is important. I just want you all to know your support is welcomed, and thank you. Now, without further ado, this would have never happened the way it happened without the great Elaine Haney.
Thank you, Dottie and Joan. Everyone, please give them a round of applause. And also any cabinet members who are here right now, any members of our cabinet, please stand up and be recognized that we can all thank you as well. I know Liz Gamache is here, Shana Casper, Sue Minter, Brenda Churchill, Ann Lezak, Catherine Sims, Monique Priestley, Helen Head. We have a rock star cabinet, and I'm honored to be a part of it. And it's so good to see all of you here tonight. And we started pretty late, but it's because we're all having a really great time. So I think we're all good with it. So at Emerge Vermont, we train Democratic women to run for office. But unless you actually do it, no training can truly prepare you for the courage, the fortitude, determination, and persistence necessary to get elected. Campaigning is brutally difficult. It runs from brilliant highs to devastating lows, often all in the same day. It requires strength and resilience to endure constant scrutiny, endless canvassing, grueling debates, never-ending dialing for dollars, harsh criticism, and skeptical voters, and all with no guarantee of success. Running for office is an act of courage and an act of faith in oneself and in others. And anyone who does it, regardless of the outcome, deserves our respect. Woo-hoo! Many Emerge Vermont alums won their primary races in August, but a small number did not. And while it was gratifying to finally see a slate of such strong women candidates for Congress, and while we were so proud to see two of our brightest stars in the race, it was terribly hard to watch them compete against each other. Tonight, as we celebrate women in politics, we would like to honor our own Lieutenant Governor Molly Gray. For her brave and hard-fought race. As our Lieutenant Governor and as a candidate, you have been a role model for women and girls across Vermont. Thank you for running, and thank you for your continued leadership. Usually at this part of the program, I start telling you about how Emerge Vermont is doing, but really all you need to know is this. Would you put the next slide on, Bob? That's how Emerge Vermont is doing. The alums comprising this amazing 92% win rate are graduates of our signature training program. But with the wave of legislative retirements this year, it enabled us to train even more women to run. So right before the final paperwork submission deadline, we quickly ramped up and trained an additional 23 women to campaign. 13 of those women were also on the primary ballot in August. And so of all 62 Emerge Vermont trained women on the ballot, 90% of them won. And we broke even more ground. Over 37% of alums on the ballot were also members of the new American majority: Black, brown, and indigenous women and women of color, as well as LGBTQ+ young and unmarried women. And 10 women on the primary ballot were first-time candidates. What's more, Emerge Vermont trained women on the ballot made up 39% of all candidates from all parties on the entire ballot. If you were an alum on the ballot in August, please stand up so we can applaud you. The wave that started with Governor Madeline Cunan's founding of Emerge Vermont in 2013 is cresting. We're starting to see the results of almost a decade's hard work come to fruition as the 174 women we have trained so far are stepping up, running, and winning. But it's more than the training. It's a movement. Women across Vermont are acting with an urgency that can only come from our rights and our democracy being threatened on all sides. Whether it's the overturning of Roe v. Wade, election deniers, racist mascots, anti-trans legislation, I could go on. The women we train are motivated like never before. They aren't just taking their seats at the table, they're taking the wheel. And at Emerge Vermont, we are happy to give them the keys. November is coming. There will be dozens of our alums on the ballot from Justice of the Peace all the way up to Congress. If elected in November, they will transform our political structures, provide new voices for traditionally underrepresented communities, and demonstrate the importance of women in leadership. Seats will be flipped and history will be made. After the election, Emerge Vermont will turn our attention to training more women to run for local office. According to UVM, less than a third of select board members in Vermont are women. At a time when communities are being targeted by conservatives eager to impose racist ideology on schools or to exert control over local elections, it has never been more important to elect more Democratic women to these local bodies. This fall, we'll be launching Emerge Vermont Local to train women considering to run for their select board or school board, just in time for town meeting day elections. This fall, we're also continuing our successful Legislator Toolkit webinar series to provide more professional development opportunities for alums as they enter the legislative session. And finally, the application for our signature training program, our flagship 70-plus hour course that provides all the skills and tools necessary to run a successful campaign, is open until November 1st. We'd love each of you here tonight to share this news with women throughout your communities and encourage them to apply to become a member of the class of 2023. As Emerge Vermont enters our 10th year, we are committed to increasing women's representation at all levels of government. As demographics transform the country and our state over the next 15 years, we're proud to be a part of Emerge's plan to ensure that more Democratic women representing the new American majority hold elected and appointed office.
There is a shift happening.
America is changing.
By 2045, this nation and its communities will be completely transformed.
In fact, it's already begun.
We are at an inflection point.
And the rise of the new American majority
is much closer than we think.
But who are we?
Who is this new American majority?
We are not just the future.
We are the now. Black women, brown women,
indigenous women,
women of color,
young women,
LGBTQ+ women,
and unmarried women who make up a growing number of this nation's population.
These are the faces of the new American majority.
We will determine the direction of this country.
It's time for our country to recognize us, to see our power,
to hear our voice.
The truth is, we have always been here,
changing the conversation
and fighting for a brighter future.
So march with us.
Reach out to us.
Engage with us.
And follow our lead.
We are the faces of the new American majority.
The new American majority.
We are coming.
We are ready to serve,
To lead.
To advocate.
To run.
To win.
We matter because our communities deserve better.
We deserve to see ourselves reflected in the seats of power.
This is not only a moment.
This is our movement.
Our time is emerging.
And we are ready.
With 174 alums, 55 of them in office right now, and an incredible 92% win rate, Emerge Vermont has proven that we can change the face of government and get more women elected. A group of donors has pledged $2,000 to us tonight, if we can match it. So we're up to the challenge, and we're going to make it fun. So take out your phones. So hold your camera up. You'll see a link. Tap the link. And it will take you to our website where you can make a contribution to help us meet the match and earn an additional $2,000 tonight. So thank you for trying that. It was really fun to try. We'll try it again later in case you need to try it again and get it right the second time. So now I'm excited to turn our amazing program over to our speakers. Our speakers are trailblazers, every single one of them. Our first trailblazer was one of a small group of intrepid women who joined Governor Madeleine Kunin as she founded Emerge Vermont. In 2008, she made history as the youngest state legislator in the country at the time and the first person of color ever elected to represent Burlington. In 2016, she ran for lieutenant governor of Vermont. In 2020, she made history again as the first woman of color ever to be elected to the Vermont Senate. And most recently, she ran for the U.S. House and is currently running for re-election to the Vermont Senate. I am very proud to welcome today Senator Keisha Ram Hinsdale.
Thank you, Bob. I always look at Joan or Becca to know how I'll look at the podium as a shorter person. Thank you. Before I focus on my remarks at hand and my wonderful introduction, I wanted to give special recognition to someone who I did ask if it was okay if I mentioned her, but I don't think she thought I would actually do it. But I did want to take a moment to recognize Emerge alum Emily Krasnow. Some of you may know she actually buried her mother yesterday, and she's still present for this event. Susan Krasnow, her mother, was a special educator for over 40 years, and she delighted in knowing her daughter would be sworn into the legislature in January to fight for those who are underrepresented. And that's what Emerge is all about. So I wanted to recognize you. Speaking of those who are underrepresented, I was able to offer remarks at the portrait unveiling of Alexander Twilight in the State House this past spring. That portrait is the first of a person of color to permanently reside in the State House. Of 86 permanent State House portraits, there are 2 of white women and none of women of color. Now, don't get me wrong, for many of us, the portrait of Governor Madeleine Kunin is something we look at daily to remind us we belong in the halls of power. I know I certainly do. But when I got to the legislature in 2009 as only the second woman of color in history to serve, I had to dig deep to find any trace or recognition of Luvenia Dorsey Bright, the first Black woman and the first woman of color to serve. I want us to take a moment to let this sink in. Though often noted as white passing, Alexander Twilight was elected in 1836 when the legislature was newly established. Luvenia Bright was elected in 1988, 152 years later. 20 years after that, I would be elected. Then came Kaya Morris and Diana Gonzalez. Currently, I am the first and only woman of color in the state Senate, and Ray Garofano is the only woman of color in the House, and she's also an alum and here tonight. I say all of this because we must do better, And with the help of Emerge and so many of you, we are poised to do better. 43% of our alums on the August primary ballot were women of color. And when we elect Lauren Dees Erickson, Leonora Dodge, Sadia Lamont, Nakuma Polchowski, and Mary Catherine Stone to the legislature this November, when we elect them, there will be more women of color serving in one session than have served in all of Vermont history. That is more representative democracy for all of us, and one that further bends the arc of the moral universe toward justice. Lauren Dees Erickson is a working mother, and if you want to be humble, just bring your daughter to an event who's sitting there saying, "Mom, don't be nervous," and not even clapping for her when she gets her flowers. Lauren is the vice chair of her planning commission, a Rotary member, a United Way board member, and an international development expert. She is running in St. Albans after years of speaking truth to power. She is unbought, unbossed, and unafraid, and she is on track to make history. When she hasn't been given a seat at the table, she has brought a folding chair and opened the door to let others into the room. If you've made a donation to Lauren, and if you haven't, you should, then you know that her thank you card quotes the great Leslie Knope, right, Elaine, the great Leslie Knope. It reads, "No one achieves anything alone." We know this in Emerge, and that has yielded the beautiful sisterhood we've had for 9 years now in our Vermont chapter. But we have to take this further for women of color. We must recognize that we collectively achieve nothing unless we lift up the voices of Black women in the process. That is our work, because it's not enough for Lauren to win. This must be a victory for all of us, and we must support her when she leads with courage and conviction, as she most certainly will in the legislature in January. Esteemed guests, I give you Lauren Dees Erickson, the next state representative from St. Albans and the future of Vermont.
Thank you, Keisha, Elaine, and Emerge for the opportunity to address all of you tonight. I'm a little nervous, so my voice might shake, but I'm going to try here. I'm not sure I can express the mix of emotions that I'm having at having the opportunity to stand in front of you and talk to you a little bit about me and St. Albans, Vermont, where I'm running for State House in Franklin 8. So a little bit about me. I was raised by my mom's family, the Dees family, comprised of proud men and women who have thrived by putting their heads down and working hard, pushing their kids to work hard, because for them, education and a borderline workaholic work ethic were the expectation. It was what we owed ourselves because of the sacrifices made by the generations that came before. Doing well, being successful, no matter what life threw our way, was a thank you to those that came before us who did not have the same opportunities. Growing up, I spent a huge chunk of time with my mom's parents. In fact, my lasting memories from childhood and of growing up were all surrounding sitting and debating at my grandparents' dinner table. Although the attendees changed depending on the occasion, intergenerational family dinners were where my grandparents, parents, aunts, and uncles debated current events. Each of them would bring things from work or their life to the table to discuss. My Uncle Michael, a prosecuting attorney, would bring questions about the justice system and how it treated kids of color. My other uncle, Lernet, a Peace Corps volunteer, a low-key hippie for our family, and then a part of the State Department, would bring up worldwide events and question American exceptionalism. My mom, who went to school for psychology but ended up in corporate America, would bring questions of what a good life looked like and felt like. And my grandfather, a judge who I spent the most time with, would round it out with a lot of sarcasm, ethics, and my favorite, politics. I could never get enough of listening and arguing and learning how to engage and communicate about issues impacting my family, our community, and the world. I knew from a young age that you had to be fluent in what was going on in the world in order to be actively engaged about things that would impact you. And you couldn't affect change if you couldn't talk about it. That all sounds great, right? But the reality is that no one in school likes the weird know-it-all girl who wants to talk about the Pinochet regime or the value of a service-focused life. Most of my peers wanted to focus on the Minnesota Twins, the latest fashion, and music. To say that I was an oddball is a bit of an understatement. But being the oddball, the one on the outside observing, gave me an opportunity to listen, to hear what people thought about, what they were concerned about, and what struggles they faced. My background has had a direct impact in the career path I have chosen. What better job for an oddball, opinionated do-gooder interested in government systems and bringing order to chaotic situations than international development? In my career, I have honed my skills working with governments at the municipal and national levels across the world. If you ever want to talk about the philosophy behind how governments can better meet the needs of their constituents through low-effort action, like the creation of a one-stop shop and easy-to-read educational material about available services, I'm your gal. But when I decided to run for... Thanks. It's the nerdiness again. But when I decided to run for State House in the newly created Franklin 8 district that covers St. Albans City and St. Albans Town, I was hesitant. I had seen my husband, Ryer Erickson, become involved in city politics, running for school board and addressing contentious issues like removing school resource officers from schools. I'd seen the very real emotional toll that results in putting yourself out there, and I was not convinced. But St. Albans is our chosen city. We bought our first home there, and our kids have put down roots. My kids are the reason why I decided to run for office. I want them to grow up in a city with diverse representation. I've spent a lot of time lately speaking with my neighbors in my chosen city, getting an understanding of the issues. Those conversations don't always look at national politics. Instead, we discuss the things going on locally. We talk about the struggles to find daycare that fits the needs of working parents, how housing stock is going down and housing prices are going up. How as new homeowners and homeowners that have been around for decades, we're all worried about the rising taxes. One of the most impactful conversations I've had while door knocking was my aging neighbor who joked with a tear in her eye that all she's doing at 85 is trying to make it so that she doesn't have to live off of cat food. I also remember speaking with a woman a day after Roe v. Wade was overturned who cried at the world her granddaughters were growing up in. It's those stories that I'm running for office. I've spent a majority of my life in white spaces, never quite able to not stick out, and there has forever been discomfort in that. I grew up in Apple Valley, Minnesota, a suburb, but it wasn't until I moved to St. Albans that I was called the N-word, walking under the all are welcome sign on Main Street. As committed to my town as I am, and I am so committed, even those that should align with me have frustrated me at times. Our local Democrats still struggle with issues of liberal, polite racism, issues of equity and policing. They are sometimes so worried about optics that they forget what is right, but we will do better together. I believe in having tough conversations with my neighbors so that we can find the places where our values overlap. As a community, we know that we all can do more. In my city, we also have a huge socioeconomic divide and a lack of very needed mental health and addiction-related support. What ties us together, however, is that we know that if our friends and neighbors are struggling, it impacts us all. And we're bound together. If my neighbor fails, then I fail. That means we need to make sure that the American dream is accessible and affordable, our society's safety social net is strengthened, and the doors of economic opportunity are wide enough that everybody can walk through them. We also need to make a commitment to diversity of thought and equity of access so that our community grows together. So listen, I'm not special. I work hard to be good at my job, to be a good wife, mother, and neighbor. I'm not really a politician yet. I'm a community member amongst other community members who knows that there has to be a better way to address the struggles we collectively face. I believe in transparency and being upfront about who you are and what you stand for, and I believe being silent is unacceptable. I believe that we can support breaking out of the mindset that we can't demand that the government meet the needs of the people. Those of us who are those that we are vying to represent, the folks that we are the most impacted, Those that we are vying to represent, the folks that are the most impacted by bad or thoughtless legislation, are those who we need to focus on, listen to, and do more for. Those of us in this room who are putting in the work, door knocking, calling, creating graphics for social media, attending events, taking pictures for the gram, we all care. But in our support of each other for the accomplishments that we have had, we can sometimes forget that the time we have to spend doing all of that stuff is reflective of a certain privilege. Ultimately, again, we're here because we care. And we have an obligation to be better and do better for others so that the people we want to represent have a voice and can see incremental improvements in their day-to-day lives. There should be no child in Vermont, in Franklin County, that doesn't have the tools necessary to go to school and thrive. Their parents should have access to services that allow them to be active members of the community. And if someone trips and falls as a result of their health or addiction or mental health, then we should be there as a community, arms open, to help them back to their feet. So I'm running. Even as a Black woman who doesn't want to stick out, my discomfort and unease means nothing in the face of the possible good that can come out of I gotta turn the page. The discomfort that can come out of me using whatever privilege I have to shine a light on the systems that need to be fixed so that everyone can thrive. Emerge helped me break down the barriers to running, and it has given me the resources and a network of like-minded women, all pursuing the same goal. Those of you in this room with illustrative careers who have national audiences have paved the way for the rest of us. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and my campaign manager, Barbara Finch, would be mad if I didn't, at the very least, extend an open invitation for any of you who are interested in coming up to Canvas in Franklin County. Thank you.
First time I met Madeline Kunin was at a book signing for her book, Pearls, Politics, and Power. And when I told her I was afraid I wasn't ready to run for office, she smiled and handed my book back to me. And in it she had written, "When you're ready to run, you're ready to run." And I looked at her and she said, "You know what I mean." And I did. And 4 years later, I won my first election and 3 more after that. And she saw it in me before I did, just like she has for hundreds, probably thousands of other women. It's my great honor tonight to introduce the founder of Emerge Vermont, Governor Madeline Kunin.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so exciting to be here and to see how Emerge not only has grown, but is a powerhouse. It has produced so many wonderful candidates Women still need, despite the feminist movement, the rise and decline and going through different permutations, still need that nudge. Somebody say, you can do it, because it's so hard to see ourselves in such positions. There just aren't enough portraits on the walls of the State House of Women and of houses of influence and corporate boards. We still don't see ourselves everywhere, though we see ourselves in more places today than ever before. And Lauren, you see yourself there, we see you there. You have all the right reasons for running, and obviously the passion to see it through. And I'm so glad that we have 92%. I mean, that's phenomenal. And these are the women who ran and won. But there are also women who ran and lost. And I'll tell you a secret. I lost my first race for governor. It's not in my bio. But it's the truth, and I can tell you the whole story, but I want to concentrate on other things, unlike most politicians. I shouldn't make fun of people who, I was one of those people. But we still have a cliched view of a politician. And it used to be a fat man puffing on a cigar with a scowl. But now the portrait is that wonderful video that you showed with all the different backgrounds and faces and colors. I mean, that's so beautiful, and that was very well done, whoever did it. Emerged nationally. It should be shown in lots of places. And I never imagined when I founded Emerge 10 years ago, and I asked Keisha to come and one or two other women, and I didn't know whether Vermont would be receptive. I had spoken in California and Massachusetts at Emerge fundraisers, and then I got home and said, why not Vermont? But we already looked pretty good according to the statistics, but not good enough. One of the shocking statistics is less than a third of women are in local office. And I'm so happy you're focusing on that from here on in, because we know now so much happens locally. Book bannings, even the abortion issue can spill over into local government. So you're doing the right thing. One thing that Emerge has been very fortunate is to have great leadership. And Elaine, you're an example, and we really appreciate the wonderful work you do. Yes. I'm here to introduce Peter Welsh, in case any of you forget as I'm going along. But you know who Peter is. But we don't know him as the next United States Senator from Vermont. I know Peter when he served in the Senate, and there are lots of memories, not all of which I will discuss. But he's been a diligent person in Washington, and sometimes it's a little hard to get a word in when you're working in the shadows of, as a representative in the shadows of two somewhat verbose senators. But now you'll be where you sort of secretly, I suspect, wanted to be all this time. I mean, it's so much nicer to be part of 100 than 435. You'll have a better staff, more, and we hope you'll have a lot of money to send back. Pat Leahy has been pretty good at that. And it's a tough tradition to follow, I know, but I think you get credit for the years you served in the House. So that should be a help, so that you don't get segued into a powerless committee, if there are such things in Washington. There are, but they don't know it. Well, it's my great pleasure to introduce Peter Welch, who's going to keep Vermont on the map.
You know, I've been introduced before. I can't say I've ever had that introduction. You know, if people want to stay around after, we'll talk about some of those stories that Madeline said weren't all good. Yeah, Madeline, when she was lieutenant governor and I was a member of the Senate, and lieutenant governors aren't supposed to talk and senators are, she always made her views known. There were a lot of men in the Senate there, and she made her views known. It was that was a great introduction. You know, I want to say just a couple of things. You know, Elaine, when you were talking, where are you? Oh, there you are. You were recounting what the struggles are when people run for office. And it's all true. And I think a lot of us who are in the midst of a campaign or are thinking about a campaign after we listened to her, started thinking, wait a minute. Because it's all true. It's really, really hard work. And you get that aspiration to serve, to be involved, to make a difference. But once that happens, you have to go face the day. And you're on your own. There's that moment where you've been talking to lots of people, but there's a moment when you have to decide, and when you make that decision, it's the loneliest moment in your political life. And you don't know how you're going to do it. You know, Keisha, you've been through this. And the thing that I think helps so much with Emerge is that you just have this sense that there are people who have your back, and that as foreign as this experience is, and without the kind of support that men have received, where it's expected, you have that support from an institution that has now won 92%. It's pretty extraordinary. But the other thing that was amazing to me listening was you, Lauren. It was really, here's what was so wonderful for me as I listened to you. Because I think you really captured, I think for a lot of us, what politics has to be about in Vermont and what it isn't in Washington. It's really listening. It's really engaging with the people in your community where they're at. It's not telling them the way it's got to be. It's not showing you're the smartest person. it's not asserting that you know the answer on how you're going to get a better healthcare system. You've got to talk about all of those things. But the beginning of persuasion is listening and empathy. And I'm going to clue you in. A lot of men aren't so good at that, okay? And a lot of politicians aren't so good at that. But Emerge folks are good at that, and you're really good at that. And what's so important about that is it's missing now. You know, you have a dialogue in Washington that's so different than what we have here in Vermont, but it's a kind of performance-based presentation. It's in-your-face kind of presentation. It's lacking in respect, and what it leads to is a breakdown in dialogue where instead of taking that time, as you do when you knock on a door, and your first question is, how are you? It's not telling them what you want them to do. You begin to build the bonds of trust, which are profoundly important to restore if we're going to have a democracy that works. And I got to say, you know, Emerge with its history, and Madeline, thank you for, founding it here in Vermont, is fundamentally important because we can't do it alone. And there has to be institutions that are there to sustain the effort and to be there when that person is ready. And the other side has understood that in some pretty nefarious ways. One of the things we're all horrified about right now in Washington is we've got an authoritarian, anti-democratic United States Supreme Court. It's a catastrophe, all right? That didn't happen by accident. It happened because years ago, a lot of very conservative Republicans, the Koch brothers, decided they wanted to get a very conservative Supreme Court. And they went about it by establishing the Federalist Society. That Federalist Society then started creating this crackpot legal theory called originalism. And basically what that was about was getting justices who would subscribe to it, and it meant that they had to essentially make it clear that when Roe came up, if they were on the court, Roe was gone. They had to make it clear that if a Clean Air Act came up when they were on the court and it was allowed by Congress, they were going to overturn that. That's another decision they just made. We can't use the Environmental Protection Agency to protect our air or our water. That's what they said. That didn't happen by accident. And what Emerge is doing is understanding that getting good women candidates doesn't happen by accident. There's a structure. There's an organization where there's a humility behind that because we understand that it takes this institution to help us get to 92%, which we have today. So that's what's really, really, really important. The other thing, I want to say something about Madeline and then Becca. Madeline, it was amazing when you won. I was there in the State House in 1984, and you mentioned, it's not in your bio, but I was there in 1982, when in the face of extraordinary challenge, you stayed the course and ran for governor and made us proud in that race. And you lost. And you came back in 1984. You came back. And this was one of the most thrilling moments in my life. Okay, it was 1984, and the excitement in the State House, in the presence of women from all across this state, to celebrate the election of our first female governor. And what was so exciting to me in that moment to be there and to witness it was that it was not just about you being the first woman. It was women knowing they had a seat at the table and the things that were so important to them and had been ignored so long, childcare, more for education, equality in education, the environment, which you were an early champion on, All of those were going to be front and center because this person was elected in 1984 to be governor. And we're all grateful for that. And that is a lasting contribution that you've made to the state of Vermont. But the other feeling, or an experience I had then, is an experience I'm having now with you, Becca. Politics, it's rough, especially now. We are dismayed about what's going on in Washington. And how do you sustain yourself? You have to have a candidate around whom you can organize. And then, through that opportunity, create a sense of renewal and create a sense of hope. And in Vermont, in this campaign, the candidate in the campaign that renewed that sense of hope for all of us in the state, which is so essential to us being successful as people, was Becca Baumann. Becca Baumann. So I am so excited, I really am, that Becca is going to be, hopefully, I'm talking hopefully about me, you're going to make it, but I got to get there too, as our first woman serving us in the United States House of Representatives, Becca Baumann. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming to celebrate tonight. We have a lot to celebrate. And before I get into my formal remarks, there's just a couple of things that I want to say. And when you get to give the keynote, you get to say some things that maybe aren't on the plan here. The first thing I want to say is Beth Pierce, until Molly was successful in her terrific campaign for LG, Beth Pierce was the only woman statewide candidate for many, many years. And that is a lonely place to be. And I know we acknowledged her earlier, but it's really a remarkable thing that Beth has done for so many years to serve us so well. Thank you so much, Beth. The other thing I want to say is I don't believe that I would have been majority leader or president pro tem if it were not for some really strong encouragement that I got from Congressman Welch. Sue, we were at an event for you, Sue Minter, when she was running for governor. We were at an event down in Brattleboro, and he pulled me aside and he said, you know, Beck, I really want you to think about running for a majority leader. And I said, thank you, but we know how people feel about uppity women, and I didn't feel like I'd been there long enough to do that. And he said, I've served with a lot of those people, and I know that you can do it, and I know it's what they need. And I said, thank you. Allison, you're laughing. You're laughing. You know it's true, baby. And so I came away from that, and it was really the first time I really thought about it. And, you know, I walked away and I thought, well, that's not going to happen next year. Like, I'm not going to do that. And you said, no, I really want you to think about it. And then Trump was elected. And everything changed for so many of us. The things that we didn't think we were up for doing, all of a sudden we were up for doing. And so we in Emerge need really strong allies. And you have been an incredible ally. And I know there are others here who have been incredible allies. And I just want to make sure that you are acknowledged in that, and that those of you who have stood with women candidates know how much we appreciate you sticking your neck out for us. So thank you. And the last liberty I'm going to take here is tomorrow is Pride. And it's a really important day every year, and it's especially important at this time when we are under so much negativity, and the trans community and the gay community and our parents are constantly under attack. And so if you don't have Pride on your schedule tomorrow, please consider going. I will be there walking with Lieutenant Governor Molly Gray hand in hand, and we want to see you there with us. We want to see you there with us. So I want to start my formal remarks by telling you about something that happened the other night. I was at an event with Bill McKibben and Congressman Welch, and we were at VINS, and we were talking about the climate crisis and the work ahead of all of us. And also it was the day after the Inflation Reduction Act had passed, and we were talking about how much good was going to come out of that. And, at the end of the event, we had 3 lines. People wanted to talk to Congressman Welch, people wanted to talk to me, and with Bill McKibben, and we were just, going through trying to talk to as many people as we could. And at one point, a woman came up to me, and I would guess she was in her 20s or so. And she first talked to me in a professional capacity. She had some questions. She, wanted to connect with my staff about some things, and we had a really lovely conversation. And then I pivoted to sort of look at the next person in line, as you do when you know that you've got a lot of people that want to connect with you. I went to pivot, and as I did that, she leaned in, and she said, "I'm gay, and a lot of people think it's not a big deal anymore in our communities here in Vermont, and I want you to know it's still a big deal." And she said, "Watching you campaign as an openly gay woman, and having you put your wife in your commercials, and having your children with you," she said, "I just can't tell you what that meant to me." And her voice trailed off, and she got really teary. And she said, "Mostly I just want you to know how much it meant to me that you ran." And I was thinking as I was coming here tonight that I know that Keisha had similar conversations, and I know Molly had similar conversations, that people saw themselves in the races that you're running, and I'm certain that happened to Shanae as well. And that is an incredible thing that we in Emerge are doing, is giving people more of a sense of possibility. So anyone in here who's had a hand in Emerge right now, we got to give ourselves a hand. We are doing really meaningful work day in and day out. So at its core, that's really what Emerge is about. It's really about offering up possibilities for people. And I should have said at the beginning, when we talk about Emerge as a democratic training program for women and girls, I want us all to be really clear. We mean the expansive sense of women. We mean trans women. We mean gender nonconforming. I want to make that explicit. So we're giving all girls and women a sense of seeing themselves in politics in a new way. And that's a really exciting and beautiful thing for all of us to be a part of. And we just had an incredible U.S. House race. And we all worked really, really hard. And as Congressman Welch said before he left, that moment when you make that decision to run is really lonely. It's really lonely. And when you're running at that level, it's especially lonely. And I want to say, we had 4 amazing women running in a primary. 2 women of color, an openly gay woman, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, every single one of us hired Emerge alums to be on our staffs. That's incredible. And I want to highlight something that I said at the Unity Rally a couple weeks ago. I became a better candidate by watching Shanae and Keisha and Molly every time we showed up for a debate or a forum. I always went in, not that they are the enemy, not even that they're my rivals. When we're up on stage, we were trying to convey ideas. And there were times when Molly did it better. And there were times when Keisha did it better. And there were times when Shanae just blew my socks off when she was able to connect with the audience. And so for all of you who are running right now, don't lose that opportunity of incredible learning from the people that you are running alongside. I am a better candidate because of the race that we all ran, and I mean that most sincerely. And I want to say, I was in the first Emerge class, 2014, and the first Emerge ED was a woman named Sarah McCall, who ended up helping Sue on her election. And the thing that I will always remember about Sarah is just that thing of that I just talked about, was that you've got to look to the rest of your group and what talents and experiences that they're bringing, because you don't know it all. You don't know it all. So go to it with a sense of curiosity. And I'm so glad that I got that message early on. So I want to thank all of you who turned out tonight for supporting Emerge. It's a really an incredible organization. We are changing culture one candidate at a time, but also one staffer at a time. Hannah King, where are you? Are you still here? Okay? And I know Molly and Keisha and Shanae would say the same thing. And this is just the kind of light that we all need in these incredibly dark times. And I'm so honored to be part of this organization, to be here tonight, to have this conversation with all of you. And I want to bring us back to when I won in 2014, that inaugural class. I was basically in the same situation that I'm in right now. And that is, I won my primary, hadn't won the general, don't have the job yet. But everybody treats you like you have the job. So you gotta walk around knocking on wood all the time. Please don't jinx me. But I was existing in a liminal space, neither here nor there. And existing in liminal spaces is not comfortable a lot of the time. You're sitting in a sense of hope and possibility, but it's also a lot of anxiety. What's it gonna be like? And you won't know until you're really in it. And after learning the job of being a state senator and then majority leader and president pro tem and like figuring out how to do the thing, I'm now back to the beginning of like not knowing how to do the thing. And that is what we all experience when we start a new job. It's not particular to me. And I was thinking a lot about the work of Martin Broadwell. And he talks about when you start a new job, you are in the unconscious, incompetent phase. You don't know what the hell you're doing, but you don't know that you don't know what the hell you're doing, okay? And that's where we all start. And that's where I've been since really since I announced, I would say, since I announced back in December, and then certainly through the primary win. And yes, like, let's not sell ourselves short. We come to any new job with experience and talent and incredible skills to bear. But we are learning a new set of rules, right? You're trying to figure out the hard power and the soft power. Who's got the title but doesn't actually have the power? Who's making the decisions behind the scenes? You know, what's being said, what's not being said. So in the unconscious incompetent phase, we don't know how to do something. And we don't necessarily understand how much we don't know. Now, this is a time when we get out over our skis. because we don't know what we don't know. And I've been thinking a lot about how it's uncomfortable to go into the next phase, the consciously incompetent phase. Because then you know what you don't know, and you know you're screwing up, okay? But I love the learning that happens in that time. And we start to see our deficits in our skills. We start to see what we're good at and what actually we're going to need help to do. And I mention it as much for me as for all of you who are running right now in other races. Because I've had so many conversations with folks in Emerge right now that go something like, I'm okay, I don't really know what I'm doing. Some version of that. And I say, yeah, no, you don't. But that's okay. Nobody does the first time. Nobody does the first time. They just pretend that they do, okay? So I think as women, and I wanted to say to you, Lauren, we're actually in a whole room full of misfits because we love politics. And that, I'm so glad you found your people. Yeah. And so I think as women, and certainly there's pressure on Keisha as the first woman of color in the Senate to be perfect, right? And Molly stepping into the role of lieutenant governor after there was such a wide gap from when Madeleine Kunin was lieutenant governor. It's a tremendous amount of pressure to be perfect. And we fall into the trap of actually putting more pressure on ourselves than other people are putting on us. And I just want to be really clear. You know this, but I got to say it. Perfection is not attainable. It's not. It's not attainable. I want us all to strive for greatness. But if we are worried about being perfect, we are not going to live our lives full up to the brim. We're just not. And that doesn't serve your constituents. And that doesn't serve our communities. Now, I detest the expression that failure is not an option. Of course it's an option. Of course it is. And when we put that on ourselves, we stay small. We don't swing out. We don't try new things. We don't try to bring other people into coalition. We want to stay safe. We want to stay in what we know. And I want all of us to feel like we can be able to make mistakes in the service of living our best lives, in the service of having a political community that actually represents all of Vermont. So make a whole lot of mistakes and stand by them and say, this is what it is to be human. I spent some time down in D.C. this week, and I have to say again, Senator Leahy, Senator Sanders, and Congressman Welch and their staffs are being incredible in helping me get oriented. And had wonderful conversations with them, but also met a bunch of people in the halls of Congress who are worried about making mistakes. As Congressman Welch says, very pro forma. It's just, I'm going to say this thing, and then you're going to say that thing, and it's going to be all choreographed. And again, there's a tremendous pressure not to screw up. I get that. But certainly all of us running for school board or select board or House or Senate here in Vermont, yeah, there's pressure on you, but swing out. Try new things. Don't worry about the mistakes so much. We're going to get a better result if you do that. The other thing I want to say is all the candidates and all the people who have served in elected office in this room, and there's a lot of you. I don't have my glasses on, but I know there's a lot of you because I saw you out in the lobby. And I know we've each had incredible moments of bravery and courage. But then we've also had lots of moments of doubt that sometimes swing into hours of doubt, sometimes into days, and sometimes you get in a low and you just feel like, when am I going to start feeling like I'm back in the groove again? Remember, you're going to have those highs, you're going to have those lows, but what is going to get you through is the courage to just show up. The courage to show up every day. Because when you come right down to it, if we are doing our jobs well, and I don't just mean as elected officials, I mean all of you and all the work that you do, when you are showing up with courage, when you are showing up with strength, that's when you change the world. That's when you really do the stuff of meaning. A tiny percentage of Americans will ever run for office, and even fewer women will run for office than men will run for office in their lifetimes. And you know this. But I highlight it again today because it takes an incredible psychological toll when you run for office. People don't really want to talk about that. Not just on you, but on your family, right? It really does. So just having the courage to put your name on the ballot is incredible. Think about that. For women, I believe it's 0.5% of women will ever run for office in this country. So if you're one of those people, hot damn. Hot damn, right? And why do we do it? We do it because we know our why. And I had the incredible honor of getting to know someone who has been doing the work day in and day out for years and years and years on behalf of all of us, and that's Speaker Nancy Pelosi. She was at a lunch the other day talking about the candidates that are running this cycle, and she said what is so noticeable is that they all know their why. They're unshakable because they know their why. For me, the why is the same why for so many of you and so many of the candidates that I've met around the country. It is absolute and total fear that we are in danger of losing this democracy. That is not hyperbole, not being histrionic. That's the moment we're at. And when you're grounded in your why, there's something that happens. You're unshakable. It's like a diamond, so firm inside of you that when you have that in mind that is driving you, then it doesn't matter if you're going to lose. It doesn't matter if you're going to mess up because the stakes are so high. And the stakes are so high right now. So high. Trump's big lie has put all future elections at risk. It's not just about January 6th. It's about a party saying, if we don't win, we are going to use illegal means to make sure we win. That's what is so scary for so many Americans right now. And yes, we should be terrified and outraged. And this is the time where we need to turn towards each other in a really big way. And it's not just turning towards elected officials. And I know so many of the women in the room who are running, and you are going to stand firmly in your power and in your strength and defend this democracy. But it's all the other people in your community that also need to show up and talk to their neighbors and speak up at school board meetings and speak up at select board meetings. And it's a lonely place to be, but people of color have been doing it for a very, very long time. And it's been very uncomfortable for them. And we need to do better. That's also the reason why I'm asking you to go to Pride tomorrow. If you've never been to Pride, I encourage you, do something, swing out a little bit. You don't have to be gay to go. But we're pretty fun. So, despite the work that we still all have to do, and there's a lot of it, I don't ever want us to forget that the Bill of Rights in this country affords us freedoms that so many other countries do not have. They don't have. We forget that. We got to be willing to fight for that. All of us, not just elected officials. And what I hear when I go out on the campaign trail is people say some version of this, and again, I'm sure Molly and Keisha heard this too, which is, thank you for running. Thank you for running. I couldn't do it. I don't want to do it. It's uncomfortable. Thank you for doing it. And there's something in it of, you have something special that I don't have. And I'm going to let you in on a secret. It's just not true. It's not true. You have everything you need, I promise. Whether it's to run or to stand up at a select board meeting or a school board meeting. It's your heart and your spirit and your gumption and your smarts and your wit and your belief, like your fundamental belief that we can make change. That's what it takes. Seriously, that is all it takes. So, in her book, The Lightmaker's Manifesto, which I hope you will read, it's a woman named Karen Walrond. She talks about how do you show up and be an activist? How do you show up and be a fighter and not lose hope? Okay, so it's a book we all need. She says, you know, when we get moved towards change, we do it because there's some spark, something that we see that says inside of us, that is not right, and I have to do something about it. Or that is profoundly unfair, and I just won't stand for it. But she asserts it's not just about being outraged. It starts often with outrage, starts with anger, but then it takes steady, hard work, day in and day out. Not just individually, but in coalition with others. So, as I was saying, it takes steady, consistent work and working coalition. And I love that Lauren talked so much about listening and that Peter Welch talked about listening, and Keisha, the theme throughout, that is how we do our service, is deep listening. And so when we listen to the voice inside of us that says that's not right, that's unfair, I want to do something, you know, we should fix that. We should fix that. We should fix that. And we can fix it. And we have to believe that. And it's going to take time. Whatever it is that you're working on, it's going to take time. I promise you. It's going to take you longer than you think and longer than it should. But we don't have any other option if we're going to live our lives full up to the brim. If we're going to save this democracy, we don't have another option. And it can actually be incredibly joyful, because that's what I see out here. I see so much joy and hope in this room. So much. So much. And whether you are running for select board, whether you're running for school board, whether you're actually not going to run for anything, but you're going to help somebody in your community run, you have to believe that change is possible. And we've lost that. There's a sense of hopelessness that's taken hold in this nation, and that is the most dangerous thing that we are all facing, is the hopelessness. So, tonight, we are here to celebrate people who have stood up and put their names on the ballot. But I want to turn it back on all of us. Becca, as a Vermonter who lives in my community in Brattleboro, what do I do day in and day out to make life better when I'm not in elected office, when I'm just, as someone said to me the other day, I was shopping, as I do, I need food for my children, and a woman said, geez, you're shopping like a regular person. I said, yes, I am a regular person. And it's going to take all of us, all the regular people, because you know this, but democracy does not function when we are passive. It doesn't. It doesn't function when we're bystanders. And I know we get weary from all of the work that it requires. But there are such strong forces in this nation right now that want us to disconnect from each other, to lose hope, to believe that all is lost. And they're working very hard to make sure that we are not paying attention. And I just want to tell you, I know it's hard to pay attention. There are times when I have to turn away from the news because it's so hard. My friend Amanda Ripley, who's a writer, said recently that the news is not safe to be consumed by humans anymore. She's a reporter, and she said that. Okay? So I want to turn back to what I said before, which is you actually have everything you need to make a difference. You do. And we need you to make a difference. I want you to use your heart and your voice and your gumption and your spirit and your wit, your belief in the possibility of change, and the belief that this fragile democracy needs each and every one of us. Your town needs you, your state needs you, your country needs you. And we all are part of an incredible change-making community here in Emerge. And I am so proud to be part of that with all of you. Thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening, everyone. What a wonderful long evening. And I really appreciate your hanging in there with me. I'm Helen Head. I have the joy of recognizing Representative Maxine Grad, who is this year's winner of Emerge's highest honor, the Cunin Achievement Award. I had the opportunity to serve with Maxine for 16 of the 22 years she served in the Vermont House. Maxine landed on the Judiciary Committee the biennium after the passage of civil unions. After 2 years, she became vice chair and then chair in 2015. Maxine was a tireless advocate of policies to make Vermont a safer and more equitable state. She advanced bills that addressed domestic, sexual, and gun violence, focusing both on enhancing victims' rights and ensuring fair consequences to those who get caught up in the criminal justice system. Under Maxine's leadership, we've seen passage of vital policy initiatives related to reproductive liberty, Vermont's parentage and adoption laws, and much more. So what I'm going to do tonight is share with you some of the praise and stories from members of the legislature, past and present, about Maxine. Maxine created a warm and welcoming atmosphere for all in committee, regardless of party affiliation, using her quiet, deliberative, respectful style and exceptional active listening skills to guide proceedings with an even hand. Maxine loves to dance. In committee, she likened her role as chair to that of a choreographer. She would choreograph the work and then guide the performance, first in the committee room and then on the floor of the House. We remember the fresh flowers that Maxine brought into the committee room every week. Sometimes non-judiciary members would step into the committee just to gaze at the flowers and take a few deep breaths. House and Senate leaders sometimes have prickly relationships. Not so much with Maxine. Early on, she and her Senate committee counterpart bonded over Maxine's puppy. Maxine was the only legislator that I recall serving while she was pregnant. She was an inspiration and a role model, always putting family first, taking time away to tend to family needs. The gun safety debate brought credible bodily threats to Maxine as her home address was circulated over social media. When school children visited to voice concerns about gun violence, Maxine urged them to write their messages on the committee's whiteboard. She insisted that the messages stay up through the session over objections from those who wanted those messages removed. I'd like to close with two especially memorable quotes, one from a Republican and one from a Democrat. Maxine was always true to her beliefs, a strong advocate for women's issues and victims' issues. She had enough pragmatism to work with others to get most of what she believed in, even if all of what she believed in was not on the table. And then she quickly gave me a lot of responsibility where I was ready for it, but never let me get out on thin ice, which I might have done without her guidance. She often shared her thinking and her experience with me about how we should navigate difficult issues and tricky moments in the committee process, and even asked me to help think those through. And on one of the biggest issues to come before her committee, where I had a different view than she and House leadership and our party, she only asked why, and then let me go my own way. She could easily and justifiably have handled it much differently. I will forever be grateful that she didn't. We are forever grateful to Maxine for her remarkable service. And as y'all might have heard at the very beginning, Maxine couldn't be here tonight because she's home recovering from COVID. And true to form, before the toughest symptoms of COVID set in, she wrote and recorded the remarks she'd make tonight if she were here in person. And I believe we have that recording.
Good evening. I am sorry I cannot be with you tonight. Thank you to my colleague, former Representative Helen Head, for your introduction. Your leadership on issues of women in the military, housing, and economic development have improved the lives of many Vermonters, especially women. Your role of introducing me tonight adds deep meaning to this incredible honor. Thank you to Emerge Cabinet for your recognition of my leadership, and Executive Director Elaine Haney for facilitating my remarks tonight. I also want to thank House Speakers Kowinski, Johnson, Smith, and Symington for your confidence in my leadership and your appointments that helped pave the way to this award. Thank you to my family for giving me the support to lead in the State House and our Moortown House. My deepest gratitude goes to Governor Madeline Kunin. I am so grateful to accept this award carrying your name. I remember how honored I was when you appointed me to Vermont's first Victim Compensation Board back in 1990. While at the time I didn't consider a political life for myself, I know you did, Governor, as you have for so many women. I can't help but think that your sound fiscal leadership that implemented a hiring freeze serendipitously helped direct my political life. At that time, I was a top candidate for a position at Vermont's Office of Legislative Counsel. I was offered a temporary position there to gain experience in the event the hiring freeze was lifted. Upon accepting the job in 1986, I was assigned to staff the House and Senate Judiciary Committees, only to be elected to the House and appointed to the Judiciary Committee in 2001, where I served my entire legislative career. Governor Kunin, I am so grateful for you helping me emerge in my political career. Emerge's mission to, quote, increase the number of Democratic women leaders from diverse backgrounds in public office positions, end quote, is critical, especially now. The issues many of us have provided leadership on for decades are not only still barriers to women's autonomy, but have resulted in the increased deprivation of women's liberties and the criminalization of women's health care choices. Nationwide, women suffer through an increased lack of access to justice, due in part to laws enacted in states where the majority of voters support reproductive and economic justice. Without women being at the table, child care, paid family and medical leave, flexible workplaces, reproductive, economic, and environmental justice will continue to be challenges to women's autonomy. I think of some of the laws I helped pass as examples of what happens when women leaders are at the table and bring forward issues that are vital to women. I championed laws addressing breastfeeding in public and the workforce because of my lived experience as a mother and an elected official. Our son was born during the 2004 legislative session, and there were very few places for me to comfortably feed him or pump milk. Because I was at the table, I was able to advance important health and economic policies. If more women served in public office and more protections for breastfeeding and birthing persons existed, would the recent infant formula shortage endanger the maternal and child health of so many, especially those of BIPOC women and children? As a legislative leader, I and Emerge cabinet member and former Representative Sue Minter championed teen highway safety laws. At the time, we were mothers of teen drivers, and cell phone use while driving contributed to an increased rise in teen highway injuries and fatalities. Conversely, in 2002, as a mother of 2 teenage daughters, I knew that passing a law requiring parental notification for a minor's abortion would do nothing to protect my daughter's health and safety, or my role as a mother. We must not only get Vermont women elected to all levels of leadership, but we must also continually sustain their elections. As Emerge Director Elaine Haney wrote, quote, we must normalize majority women's leadership, end quote. It is an honor to be on the program tonight with Emerge Vermont alum Senator Becca Balint, who will be the first woman to represent Vermont in Congress. What an incredible moment this is. However, we cannot stop there. We need a majority of diverse Vermont women leaders. Vermont is not accepted from the misogyny, xenophobia, racism, transphobia, homophobia, and anti-Semitism we see on the national level. My leadership in reproductive justice, sexual assault, domestic and firearm violence prevention, and LGBTQ+ issues recognizes that we must improve in these areas. According to the Vermont Network Against Sexual and Domestic Violence, recently Vermont has ranked in the top 10 states per capita for rates of domestic violence homicide, the majority by firearms. We need Vermont women leaders who will champion laws and recognize that many incarcerated women are survivors of human trafficking and domestic violence. We need women leaders to continue justice reforms using a public health response and eliminating crimes like bad checks that criminalize women's life situations and contribute to a life stifled by a criminal record that is irrelevant to who that woman is and could become. We need Vermont women leaders who know that abortion care is health care and that we won't have reproductive justice until all persons seeking abortion care have true, meaningful, and unfettered access. With Emerge and all it offers to women candidates, we will get there. I thank Governor Kunin, Emerge, its cabinet, alum, and supporters for lifting women up so we can become our authentic selves and lead. Thank you.
Isn't she remarkable?
Across the country, Emerge women are repowering political structures. More women are representing Coloradans than ever before.
Nevada women lawmakers make up the majority of the legislature.
Michelle Wu, first woman and the first person of color to be elected mayor.
We are literally changing the face of leadership because we are the face of the new American majority. By 2030, the majority of American voters will be millennials and younger. And by 2045, the majority of the country will be people of color.
Representation matters. That's why at Emerge,
we are training leaders of the future.
More than 5,000 Democratic women have been trained to date, and over 1,000 Emerge women are in office right now. Because we know when voters see themselves reflected in leadership, they get engaged.
When voters are engaged, we all win.
And when women win, we get stuff done. That's how we build lasting, fundamental, and foundational change.
And that's one of the important principles behind Emerge, fighting for the ideals of our country.
In 2022, we will continue to move the direction of this country forward, from the state and local to national level.
We are prepared to move the needle.
Lean into our strengths and win together.
The new American majority is here.
Emerge.
I love that video. It makes me so happy. What a night. Thank you all so much for coming. I don't know about you, but after hearing Becca and Peter and Marilyn and Maxine and Helen, I feel like I could move mountains. I am so inspired right now. And that is what Emerge Vermont does. We strive to give every woman who trains with Emerge the confidence, the motivation, and the inspiration and the skills to move mountains. That's what we do. That was what you all do with the skills that we give you through our training. And I am astounded by the amount of the effectiveness that all of our alums have and all of the impact that you're having in our communities. And I just want to thank you all for that, and thank you all for being here tonight. There's so many people here that we just don't have enough time to thank. I see Kitty Toll. Welcome, Kitty. Thank you for being here. It's just impossible. It's impossible to just thank everybody, but I really am so grateful for all of your support. And now, if you didn't get to figure it out last time, here's another chance. I put the QR code up. So $1,350 came in the last time we did this. So that was amazing. Thank you so much. We have a match of $2,000 to make. If you're willing to do that tonight, please do so. I've also strategically placed envelopes all over the venue, so take some home, put a check in it, and mail it back. What we do can't be done without your support, and I'm so grateful for all the support you've given us so far, and I thank you in advance for all of the amazing support I know that you will provide us in the future. We have a lot to accomplish to change the face of government, but I know we are going to make it happen. So onward to November. Good night, and thank you.